Right now, something unusual is happening in the tech world. Something quiet but powerful, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. The giants of the industry, the trillion-dollar empires that dominate our digital lives, are watching a force they don't fully control. And that force is Linux. This isn't just about hobbyists installing a new operating system on old laptops. This isn't just about developers arguing on forums. This is about power, control, infrastructure, artificial intelligence, cloud dominance, and the very foundation of the internet itself. Big tech is nervous about Linux, and once you understand why, you'll never look at your computer the same way again. For decades, companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, and Meta have built massive ecosystems designed to keep users inside carefully constructed digital walls. Their business models rely on control of software, control of hardware, control of data, control of distribution. But Linux represents the opposite philosophy. Linux is open, decentralized, community-driven, and freely modifiable. It doesn't belong to a single corporation. It can't be shut down by a board meeting. It can't be monetized in the traditional sense because anyone can copy it, fork it, and rebuild it. And that's precisely what makes it powerful. When Linus Torvalds released the Linux kernel in 1991, it wasn't seen as a threat. It was a hobby project, an experiment. Meanwhile, proprietary systems like Microsoft Windows and later macOS dominated desktops. But something subtle was happening in the background. Servers started running Linux. Universities adopted it. Developers embraced it. Then the internet exploded. And when companies needed stable, scalable, customizable systems to power websites and services, Linux was there. Today, the vast majority of web servers run Linux. Most cloud infrastructure runs Linux. Nearly all supercomputers run Linux. Android, which powers billions of smartphones, runs on a modified Linux kernel. Even many embedded systems, smart TVs, routers, and IoT devices depend on Linux under the hood. This is where the tension begins. Big tech depends on Linux, yet they don't control it. That's an uncomfortable position for companies built on ownership and leverage. Take cloud computing, for example. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud all rely heavily on Linux-based systems to deliver their services. Their customers spin up Linux virtual machines every second. Containers, powered by technologies like Docker and Kubernetes, run primarily on Linux. Kubernetes itself was originally developed by Google, but is now governed by a foundation not controlled solely by Google. That shift from corporate ownership to community governance is significant. It shows how open-source projects can evolve beyond the control of their creators. Artificial intelligence has intensified this dynamic. AI models are trained on massive clusters of GPUs and servers, almost always running Linux. Frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch are optimized for Linux environments. Data centers powering generative AI tools rely on Linux's flexibility and performance. In essence, the AI revolution is standing on a Linux foundation. And while companies like OpenAI, NVIDIA, and others build cutting-edge AI systems, the operating system beneath those systems remains open source. That creates a paradox. The most advanced proprietary AI technologies in the world depend on an open, community-driven core. Now imagine what happens if Linux continues expanding beyond servers and developers into mainstream consumer computing. Over the years, one of the biggest barriers to Linux adoption on the desktop has been software compatibility and gaming. But that barrier is weakening. Valve's Steam Deck runs on a Linux-based system. Proton compatibility layers allow many Windows games to run smoothly on Linux. Hardware support has improved dramatically. User-friendly distributions have made installation simpler than ever. If Linux becomes a viable mainstream alternative for gamers and everyday users, it threatens one of the most profitable ecosystems in tech, the desktop monopoly. For Microsoft, this is especially sensitive. The company's history with Linux has been complicated. In the early 2000s, executives openly described Linux as a threat. Over time, Microsoft shifted strategy, embracing open-source projects, acquiring GitHub, and even integrating the Windows subsystem for Linux into Windows itself. On the surface, this looks like cooperation. And in many ways, it is, but it's also strategic. By bringing Linux into Windows, Microsoft ensures developers stay within its ecosystem. It reduces the incentive to leave entirely. That's not fear-driven hostility. That's competitive adaptation. Apple faces a different challenge. Its strength lies in tight integration between hardware and software. macOS is polished, optimized, and deeply integrated with Apple devices. Linux doesn't compete head-to-head in consumer polish yet, but it threatens the narrative that premium computing must come from a single controlled ecosystem. If open-source systems reach comparable usability and performance, the value proposition shifts. Suddenly, consumers may question paying premium prices for closed systems when open alternatives exist. Google presents an even more interesting case. Android is built on Linux. Chrome OS relies on Linux. Google is deeply invested in open-source development. Yet Google's revenue model depends heavily on data collection and advertising. An open operating system that prioritizes privacy, transparency, and community control can disrupt data-driven business models. Linux empowers users to modify, inspect, and limit telemetry. That transparency can challenge companies whose profits depend on information asymmetry. Then there's the geopolitical angle. Governments around the world are increasingly wary of relying on foreign proprietary software. Linux offers a path to digital sovereignty. Countries can audit the code. They can customize it. They can avoid licensing fees and reduce dependency on foreign corporations. This has led to government-backed Linux distributions in several nations. When governments adopt Linux for security and independence, it shifts power away from multinational tech firms. That's not just a market issue. That's a strategic issue. Another layer of nervousness comes from innovation speed. Open-source communities move differently than corporations. Developers across the globe can contribute improvements simultaneously. Bugs are identified and fixed in public. Features evolve organically. While corporations have resources and structure, they also have bureaucracy. Linux's decentralized model can adapt quickly, especially in niche or specialized areas. That agility makes it unpredictable. There's also the cultural shift. Younger developers increasingly value open-source collaboration. Contributing to projects, publishing code publicly, and building in transparent environments is part of modern tech culture. Companies must compete not only for customers, but for talent. If the brightest engineers are passionate about open ecosystems, corporations have to align with that mindset or risk losing relevance. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect for big tech is philosophical. Linux represents a proof of concept that massive mission-critical infrastructure can be built and maintained outside traditional corporate ownership. It challenges the assumption that innovation must be driven by centralized profit motives. It demonstrates that communities can build resilient systems collaboratively. That idea alone undermines the narrative that only large corporations can deliver reliable technology at scale. At the same time, big tech isn't powerless. Many large companies contribute heavily to Linux development. They fund foundations, sponsor projects, and employ maintainers. In a sense, they've integrated Linux into their strategies rather than trying to destroy it. But that integration doesn't eliminate the underlying tension. Open-source software can be forked. Governance can shift. Communities can reject corporate influence. That inherent unpredictability is something no executive board can fully control. And control is the core issue. In the proprietary model, updates are pushed from the top down. Features are decided behind closed doors. Data flows in one direction. In the open-source model, decisions are transparent. Code is inspectable. Power is distributed. Even if corporations participate, they don't exclusively dictate the future. As computing continues moving toward cloud services, AI platforms, edge devices, and decentralized systems, Linux sits at the crossroads of nearly all of it. It's in data centers. It's in smartphones. It's in smart appliances. It's in cars. It's in routers. It's in space missions. The more infrastructure depends on Linux, the more leverage the open source community gains. So why is big tech nervous right now? Because the balance is shifting. Because AI runs on Linux. Because cloud empires depend on Linux. Because governments see Linux as independence. Because gamers are testing Linux alternatives. Because developers love open ecosystems. Because transparency challenges data monopolies. And because a system that belongs to everyone can't be controlled by anyone. This isn't a story of imminent collapse for proprietary systems. Windows and Mac OS aren't disappearing tomorrow. Cloud providers aren't abandoning their business models. But the ground beneath the industry is more open than ever. And when the foundation of modern computing is an open, collaborative project that no single corporation owns, that changes the power dynamics. In the end, Linux isn't just software, it's leverage. It's an alternative. It's a reminder that technology doesn't have to be locked down to be powerful. And for companies built on owning the lock and the key, that reality is impossible to ignore.